Hello and welcome to another episode of Speculative Speculations. I'm Varsha.
I'm Chris.
I'm Steve.
I am Jared.
I'm Dan.
And this is a series where we talk about speculative stories in all their forms. Today, we're going to be starting the discussion for Children of Ruin, which is the second book of the Children of Time trilogy, which is nice because I don't have to come up with clever ways to say the name of the series and the book in the same sentence anymore. The short story for today is September 2005, The Martian by Ray Bradbury. We are working our way through the big book of science fiction, edited by Jeff and Anne Vandermeer. The short story for next week is Baby HP by Juan Jose Ariola. For Children of Ruin, we're going to be discussing up to the second past, which is part of the section entitled Land of Milk and Honey. And for next week, we're going to be going up to the section present 2. No, sorry. Rolling back the stone up to present 3, up to the beginning of present 3 for next week, which puts us at page 278 of the Kindle edition, and I think the US paperback
Same as mine as well.
as well, and the UK paperback. So, yeah, with that, let's get into it. What did everyone think of the beginning of this? How did it compare to Children of Time? Did it live up to your expectations? I think generally Children of Ruin is less well liked than Children of Time, as far as I know. So, what were everybody's impressions? Silence is always good, right?
I thought it was okay. Can I say? I just thought it was okay. I was not blown away by it. In fact, in complete reversal to Children of Time, I'm sort of bored of the spiders where they are now. I mean, spiders in space is not spiders. You know, they could be anything at this stage, which I think is part of the struggle there. I mean, the cephalopods are definitely much more interesting at this stage, but I think that's part of the idea because we're getting the genesis of their progression at this stage. But the rest, I just thought it was okay. But again, nothing's really happened either.
Interesting.
Cool.
I didn't think we got enough spiders to really have time to get bored with them yet. That was like the shortest section that we read, and it was only a little bit going on. I mean, basically, it was what life is like now for them and the humans on a spaceship, and then they ran into trouble, and it was a cliffhanger, and we don't know what it is. Yeah. And so that was pretty much it for the spider story in the section we read.
Sure. So
I would say there's not enough time to get bored with it yet. It was just like at first I was like, oh great, it's Porsche again, you know, and then it was like, okay, it's over, that's it. And we didn't get any further because, you know, we had to keep to the strict schedule. I can't keep going. And I think the first section was a lot of setup because we're introduced to a whole new set of characters and a whole new situation. And it's in the past. It's not up to speed. And, you know, and then it goes back to them in the section we read. And like you said, Chris, the cephalopods are the interesting thing. I like how he's taken a slightly different tact to their evolution than he did with the spiders. And we'll see where that goes. You know? But, yeah, some setup. So.
I thought it was... I'm still unsure I don't know what's going on, to be honest. I also haven't read up to where you guys have read. But like, close the whole first part, which is pretty long, is all about the new explorers, right? Or the old explorers, I guess, in this case. And I was all getting ready to like, oh, okay, well, we're done with the spiders. Each book is its own separate thing. And the story is about, I don't know, maybe I was thinking like castaways on a planet trying to survive with this experiment in the life. So I was getting ready for that. I was like, okay, yeah, this is cool. And then we went back to the spiders, which I also thought was kind of like, I don't know, like we already explored sort of this thing. I guess we were exploring the relationship between humans and spiders, but it was not as interesting as the other part for now. I'm still unsure what my thoughts are.
Does anyone else think that this is a little too close to Children of Time? It's like this. It's like the same story, just a little different.
Yeah.
I thought it was, but not quite the way you put it. I liked that it was similar but different enough to keep my interest. Like, I don't think it was too close, but I'll let you finish your thoughts first before I go on about that.
I thought it was really close. It's like almost the same setup. Kind of, I mean, there are differences, but it's kind of the same ideas, just in it with a different setup, but it's still the same playing God, creating an organism, evolving it. It gets out of control, or, it gets a little too... I did like the water bear mining that they have in space. I thought that was pretty cool, but it was kind of, I hate to be the negative Nancy. It was kind of a slog to get through. It did not flow the same way the first one did, and it seemed a little too familiar almost the whole way. And I'm kind of over the spiders too. I just don't think they're that interesting anymore. I don't know. Imagine them with a little space helmet on.
The exploration of the new planet, the red planet, was interesting because it was different than the first one, right?
Yeah.
So maybe that's going to introduce something unique, right? Because in the first one, we did not have any aliens at all, right? I don't think there were any aliens. These are the first aliens we've seen, I guess.
Yeah. And they're pretty interesting aliens too. They seem to have some sort of hive mind. It's unclear right now whether the italics communicating hive mind is the tortoises, the flying things, or just some microorganisms, because they keep talking about molecules for some reason. So I think the aliens are pretty interesting. So for me, I think I almost liked the beginning of this book more than I liked the previous one. It had enough. So there is series, and it picks up from where the last one left off, in a manner of speaking, because at the end of the book, Children of Time, we saw Portia and co leaving in the Voyager. And so now we're seeing what the Voyager is headed towards. And we're now given a bit of history of the distress call that they heard and how we got there. So I always like a good working backwards story, that this is the end state and this is how we got here. And a distress signal in and of itself is mildly interesting. But as they are headed towards that solar system, they saw a rogue planet with a weird creature that seems to have erupted from the depths, seemingly a large creature. If you take that at face value, it could also just be some frozen ice, but that picture was fascinating. I really want to know how we got from wherever we are with Tchaikovsky and the others to whatever caused that situation. What the heck is going on there? That and the space bear mining. Well, not the space bears. I'm thinking of a different book. Shout out to Joe Byrne. But the tardigrades, that was absolutely brilliant. And I thought the beginning, yes, was very similar to Children of Time, but I thought of that as a good thing. It has echoes of things that are familiar to us to build the base for what I think promises to be a pretty different story. It makes sense that the events are sort of the destruction of Earth was the radiating event that caused the humans to get to where they are right now. And the thing that caused it is that virus that they were protesting, that you're trying to elevate the non-human creatures. So it makes sense that there's yet another plot that's built to a certain extent around it. And I think the cephalopods are just different enough from the spiders, but similar to be interesting. And Tchaikovsky is fascinating. I think I liked him more than any other human character we've had so far. Holston was fine, but I didn't find him interesting, if I'm being honest. Tchaikovsky is immensely interesting. And same with...
And that's the one who's in charge of the octopi, right?
Yeah. He likes his pets.
Yeah.
And the other guy, Baltiel, is that his name?
Baltiel, yeah.
Yusuf. Yeah, he's pretty cool too. And it almost started like the relationship between Holston and I forget who the overlord was who wanted to become a computer, but it almost started like that, the relationship, but not quite, because Baltiel is interesting too in his own right. Like, he has his own interests and he has this need to not destroy the planet. And both of them have this strange God complex, which is, again, just sufficiently different from Kern to be interesting. So overall, I think, like, I don't know if I would have, how this would have read to me if I hadn't read Children of Time first, but like on a sheer comparison basis, I even like this beginning more than Children of Time.
Well, he's definitely stays on theme with the whole. He's still using the the ancient mythological names, and he's still using the themes of humans playing God to different things. There's a really interesting quote in the beginning here, and it says, it was because when you went up to an alien world and met the aliens were supposed to be able to greet you. Advanced science as far as you like, the human mind continues to place itself at the center of the universe. And I thought that played into his theme of what was going on with the aliens on this planet, and they just can't figure them out. They just can't quite find that connection that they're looking for as being connected to the human race in a way that feels familiar, and it's not gonna be familiar, but the human mind still wants to make that connection no matter what, and he's still playing with that theme and that aspect of things. And I liked how these guys thought Kern was crazy when they left, but they're basically doing the same thing. So it was kind of interesting there. Yeah.
Yeah, I like the admiration that Senkovi has for Khan, but then he also thinks that she's a crazy woman.
Yep.
Yeah.
One thing I didn't like about that was that it kind of makes it feel like them mentioning Kern and the fact that while the spiders and the humans are also heading towards this world, I guess, it kind of makes the universe feel a bit small. You know what I mean? It's like they're supposed to be huge, like they're supposed to be colonizing planets, interstellar travel. There's probably billions of humans in theory in this empire, right? But like, I guess they're very famous scientists, but still, like, even now, like, even if I'm a scientist, would I be able to mention all the other scientists that are? But I don't know. There's a lot of people. It kind of makes it feel like it's not that big, And maybe I would have preferred if it was, I don't know, if a new ship which was coming was not the spiders, was some other ones, and maybe in the third book at the end they all converge. You know what I mean?
Yeah. That does make sense, because like the whole blocking communication out from Earth, but one, that was absolutely terrifying. But second, why didn't that happen to Khan? Because that was after her time. So why didn't that happen to her ship? And
didn't it?
I don't think it got wiped out. Like, I guess it wasn't trying to communicate back to Earth, but they wiped out the ships, like, to the point where they were inoperative. Whatever signal they sent.
Oh no, but her ship got blown out by terrorists before this signal arrived, I think.
I see, but it affected the shuttles too, and Khan was in some sort of like weird shuttle orbit thing. Like, whatever could understand Earth signals apparently was infected. So maybe the fact that Khan had uploaded herself into that system saved that somehow. I don't know.
But I don't think the shuttle communicates with Earth because it's too far away, like the main ship does. So probably in this case, since the ship was still operational and communicated with shuttle, it transmit through it. But in Kern's one, it was probably isolated. That's how I read it.
Yeah, that makes sense. And Senkovi got like extremely lucky with that shutdown thing happening at that precise moment. Like, why was it not a repeat signal when you like they were dedicated enough to do that. Why didn't they send it out on repeat? Why take chances, quote unquote?
Maybe the signal breaks the machines which transmit the signal because we're all machines. It's like a disease, a plague. I don't know.
Yeah,
it just kills the host.
Maybe, but yeah. So does that mean that these are the last of humanity, other than like whatever was left on Earth that managed to?
Well, how did the Gilgamesh escape?
The Gilgamesh is
That was
10,000 years
10,000 years later.
yeah,
Right.
yeah.
Okay, right.
in the future.
So,
Yeah.
It was a colony ship rather than a space exploration at that stage.
Yeah.
I think the question about how small the universe feels is one of those classic problems. It's almost certainly like a book problem, because if it's a movie or TV series, you don't feel the need to do this. But in books, it seems to be an issue that you have to tie series together by more than just a very loose plot. So if somebody gets 100 pages through this and doesn't recognize any of it, they go, "Oh, I'm not reading anymore." Like it isn't what I liked about the first book in some way. So having just those slight touches back, I'm sure is his kind of tie in to say, look, this does tie in together at some stage. And I do think, like, knowing and reading enough Tchaikovsky now to know he likes to furrow same ground, if that makes sense. So like a lot of his books kind of start off in similar paths and then diverge, like almost a different idea. And for this one, it feels like Children of Time was about humanity starting up a sentient race by virtue of a virus, but at arm's length, and almost theology is what guided those people. The spiders, they were allowed to grow in peace, and so to speak, and kind of make their own way, whereas the cephalopods are under very much tight control and almost trying to outwit humanity the whole way through. They're having to fight their sentience and kind of not reveal too much of themselves at any given point, or kind of say what they are. So they're only given little bits in and out of what they think's happening. And I think that's where a lot of the interest of this book appears to be for the moment for me, which is very much about, actually, this is similar, but I think it'll start to diverge as we go away, because essentially what should happen, I think, is that the pets, i.e. the cephalopods, will try and overthrow the masters in this case, because they are fighting for space. They're basically living in captivity at the moment in a lot of ways, and being bred and controlled, and not even being given identities, like Paul 2, 4, 57, all of that kind of stuff is literally just small incremental changes. So we'll see where it goes.
Yeah,
it better diverge. It better not be the same story.
I mean, I think it has to, right, Steve? Because like maybe I don't know how much of we might still see an evolution story for the cephalopods, but the end point, which is that planet flying off into space, because what happened to it? How do we get there? I think that I think it has to be a different story than the first one. And there's like 3 different candidates for that. Whatever humans did to blow things up, possibly. But that seems less likely than the we that are they, who are the them, whatever the aliens call themselves, the tortoise, and the cephalopods. So there's 3 different candidates for species who have gotten to that point that they're using tardigrades to mine moons around a Jupiter-like planet. Mm-hmm. And through the image of this huge ship or asteroid or whatever as a spittoon for the tardigrades, that was brilliant.
Yeah. There's also the idea that this could be, and it's not going to be, but this could be another alien origin story. This could be xenomorphs in a lot of ways. Like the octopus could turn into these kind of almost overlordy kind of like overworld, and then they have drones. Like, why would they do the work themselves? In much the same way as the spiders have done with the ants and the humans as it is now.
Yeah. And they're going to create some weird artificial humans with gills and stuff. So that's got, like, even if I think it might be inevitable that part of the story is similar, but I think there's enough different elements to it, additional elements that weren't in the first book, that it promises to be a vastly different story. But we'll see where it goes.
It better be, because I'll be really upset if it's the same story again.
I mean, maybe it's too easy to say, but it sort of feels like because of how it's going, the spiders will be seen as the good guys and the cephalopods will be seen as the bad guys in so much. And if you're setting up a war at the end of the third book of children of basically Earth's creation with no humans left, and you've got good against bad, that's sort of that's the direction it feels like it's going at the moment.
But kind of
that's
like what
Dan... actually, that might happen. Go ahead, Steve, sorry.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. No, I just agree with what you said earlier about it seems like a small neighborhood when it's really the vastness of space. And if you think about space and just how it's hard to even wrap your mind around how big it is, and then they just happen upon each other. Just the odds of them running it. It's like, how often do you run into someone in your own city?
Ridiculous, yeah.
Much less in the vastness of space. Like, oh, hello. It just seemed a little. If they had these worlds plotted out. Well,
were they not following something?
Not a distress signal, and they weren't.
Yeah. But even that, that's a strong signal. I mean, the time it takes to get from that point to another point, and I guess you can say, yeah, it took a long time to get the sound. It took a long time to get there, but then they're jumping through time, so I guess you can use that as a way to fast forward through time, because time isn't the same, because they're leapfrogging, but. I don't know. I just see it's kind of like Star Wars. How all these Star Wars movies have the same family in it, and it's like this huge galaxy. It's like, let's talk about the Skywalkers. It's like, let's not. Like the most interesting Star Wars movies are the ones that don't talk about the Skywalkers. Like Rogue One is like the best Star Wars movie because they don't. That's not what it's about.
Yeah, but the universe of incredible coincidences.
Yeah. But anyway, no. I mean, I know it sounds like I'm coming down. I thought it was fine. It just seemed a little too familiar.
I don't know. That's why I was thinking again that it was going to be a completely separate story when I read it, because it's like, just make it completely different. And I thought the first book did a lot better. Again, we haven't really read that much of this one. Did quite a lot better, like showing the time periods and the distances. I felt it a lot more on the colony ship and all the different generations of spiders versus this one. This one, it feels all a bit more concentrated, sort of the same time period. I haven't felt yet that, we're thousands of years or even more distance or time difference. So I don't know. And that's why I was thinking when I was reading the first part, it was going to be, one separate story, second separate story with similar theme, and then the third story, which starts with a similar theme and then goes completely different, just like, the usual rule of three, like, you have first one, second one, almost the same, third one, opposite or whatever. But it might be true, like Chris said, it's going to be like first book versus second book, aliens against each other. That could also happen.
Well, at the bit where we left out of, the humans were attacked. I mean, that didn't happen in the first by the alien species, by the tortoise at any stage. So that didn't really happen at that stage. And again, it almost reads like an accident, like it wasn't planned, because it wasn't even the cephalopods that did it. It was the tortoise that did it. It was, that kind of thing. But again, that toxin thing. And that didn't happen until the very end of book one. But I do not think the outcome is going to be the same. This is not to enslave the race. This is almost certainly to control them or otherwise, which is interesting, I think, because the humans in this like Tchaikovsky stuff have already sort of said that they don't really see themselves in another 100 years being around. This is very much about setting up a future society. They've no sort of designs that this is the last saviors of humanity, because to them, essentially, humanity's still there, even though it's kind of went dark for them.
So, confession time. I was this close to pulling a Varsha and reading like the last couple lines of the book. Just to see if it ended the same. Yeah. I was really, really close. I thought this better not be the same. It better not end the same way as the first book. I thought I could just read the last couple sentences. It'll be fine.
I'm actually gonna Did you? I did not actually. I only do that when I get impatient and I need to know. And when that happens, the last page is kind of the least likely place to get my answer. So selective skim reading is more productive for those reasons.
So hold on, wait till I get this right. You only do it when you're actually enjoying a book? That's even worse.
That, or I'm really, really slogging and I need something interesting to latch onto.
You need something.
One of those. Usually the first.
Interesting. There's no doubt, though, I'm not finding it as propulsive and as interesting as the first book was. Again, probably for a lot of the reasons that we've said, it's sort of treading old ground. The fact that it's a very different setup here. There are interesting things that happen. I mean, the changes are the bits where you're going, okay, give me more of this. This is good. In the couple of places where that has happened, it was like, right, okay, give me more of this. As you've also said, unfortunately, we've only really seen the spiders get to the confrontation point, and then it's backed away from it, and we're 160 pages into it, and they haven't returned, so to speak. So it's been a bit, what's happening? But I've still got hope. I've still got hope.
Another thing to keep in mind is that we're only seeing just that little ship of the spiders and the humans. We have no idea what happened to the whole race of spiders, the whole planet and stuff like that. That's a whole other place.
So we'll be going back to the planet?
I don't know. I don't think it's like Chris said, it all depends on how the story goes. Is this cliffhanger we ended on here with them encountering this, ice mining thing, whatever it is, what is that confrontation going to result in? And is it going to result in some sort of blowback on the home world? Is it going to be a signal going back to the home world, distress signal, or a signal of look what we found type of thing? And is that going to, drive the spider home world to seek out more and possible colonization or possible conquest, maybe? Who knows? But or is it going to be distress and what have you? The spiders so far just a very small segment of the spider population. That's what I'm getting at. But it's still, as far as we know, on both sides, past and present, a very small, minuscule amount of humans that are left. So you also got to wonder what's going to happen there. The repetition didn't bother me that much in here, as far as, because I don't know, I kind of expected it a little bit, just because it is a sequel, and it is part of a series. So I guess you get that quite a bit in fantasy series, anyways. So it didn't bother me that much, and I don't know, I kind of like Portia. She's my hero. So.
Yeah.
I'm wondering, why do you guys think that, why do you guys think that for sci-fi series or books, a lot of time it's just like either a standalone book, or in my experience, having a series, it's not like big. It's not like it doesn't become much better because it's like 3, 4, or 5 books and you get huge, long books, versus fantasy, where that is the thing. Like, the standalone books are the exception, as opposed to the norms. And I don't feel like when I read a fantasy book, I'm like, oh yeah, I want to read a lot of it. When I'm reading fantasy, when I'm reading sci-fi, I don't feel like that. I'm not sure why. What do you guys think of it?
That's actually what I'm trying to discover myself by reading this kind of science fiction on these weekly basis, and also with our sci-fi masterworks read along, and because I always considered sci-fi just another aspect of fantasy myself. And so I'm trying to discern what the differences are by delving into all these things. And so it's a good question. And I think, nothing easily answerable.
I think what's interesting to me about it, like, we've read obviously a lot of the sci-fi masterworks, and some of those are first books in a series of those that we haven't continued on. But I think a lot of those first books sort of stand by themselves because they're about a central idea and theme that you want to explore. Whereas fantasy is less, I think, about this central idea that you want to explore and more about actually here's an intricate set of characters or a certain different flavor of the same story. It is very derivative in a lot of ways, especially classically, to be of that kind. And I think this is interesting because, as you say, Dan, the sci-fi doesn't do an awful lot of these, but Tchaikovsky also is a dual author. He writes sci-fi and fantasy, and he had, before this he had written Shadows of the Apt, which was obviously nine books long, isn't that right? So he sort of maybe thought that that's what you had to do. Now, if you go to his more recent work, he has tended to do an awful lot of standalones as things. So I wonder if he's found in his craft it was more interesting for him to just keep on doing the standalones and hit the one idea and then branch it off and do different versions of that same story, like he seems to have done with like Alien Clay and Cage of Souls. Start in the same place, diverge in two different paths and two different stories, and let your readership do that. And I wonder if it was because of feedback that he got from the writings of this series, because like the first book is phenomenally loved. Obviously, Children of Time is one of those ones that makes all the lists, and it's not that people seem to hate the next two, but they definitely feel like they're not as beloved. I think it's probably an easier way just to say it, you know.
In theory, you should be able to, like, if you think about it, okay, sci-fi is centered upon an idea, right? We have the idea of the first book of Children of Time. In theory, you could do the same structure with fantasy. You have an idea, and you have even more liberty, possibly, I guess, because you're not even constricted by science. You have magic and anything. So I guess I'm now wondering, maybe it's just because of how society and how the history of these genres evolved, that's what we're expected. And that's what, I guess, the framework of these different genres is.
Yeah.
Not anything inherent in them, but I don't know.
Yeah. I mean, the simplest, most reductive reasoning would be that sci-fi doesn't have to do as much world building. They can focus on the idea, and they want to get that out there and have it be the thing that the book is about. And fantasy was about going to that other place and then having a different world and having that and having this magic and having all that, like the buildup of creating something that's definitely not new and earth-based. You know, and fantasy veers towards the mythology for that inspiration, whereas science fiction veers towards what's happening today, like we said before, and just an exploration of the possibility of what will happen tomorrow. And so it's that, you know, that's the most reductive, you know, difference. I mean, of course, there's so much variety in all of it that there's plenty of fantasy books that have one idea and they're done too. So it's you know, it's
Yeah, there's also the thought experiment aspect of sci-fi, right? I think at least a lot of classic sci-fi and some modern sci-fi like this one. A lot of modern sci-fi seems to be space opera for some reason, but in as much as the thought experiment ones are published, they like you do the thought experiment and then you're done. If you write another book on that same thought experiment, unless you have something vastly different to say, maybe go in a different direction of where this could go. I guess like there's pretty much only room for that one book, which I think this might be a similar thought experiment, but taking it a different direction, like modifying. We know what they can do with genetics, apparently. So modifying humans here and creating a different creature, which we may not necessarily be as sympathetic to. Like we're finding them cute now, but we also see that broken planet going off into space. So how did we get there? And the new aliens, which also, I guess, there was something. Okay, just closing out that thought. I think the thought experiment aspect of sci-fi probably also means that we restrict books we are restricted to one book rather than series. But going back to what you brought up, like on the subject of genetic modification, the injection that the tortoise gave, I forget the name of the character, Loris. That was terrifying for so many reasons. One, we know that these aliens, like even though these guys have been happy to call them mindless, though not in the annoying way that we have encountered in some sci-fi, they've just been like exploring the biology and seeing that they don't seem to have what may be considered brain cells, or like whatever. They don't have enough neural structure for them to be a proper mind. But we know from the interludes that they are interested in these creatures and they want to imbibe them or like do something with these guys, right? And the last thought that that she has, or he, before fainting, is that there shouldn't be a toxin on this planet that affects human biology. But we also know that those aliens have been looking at the alien molecules of the humans. So did they synthesize something that could be poisonous to humans? Which, yeah, again, terrifying and immensely interesting to see where that goes.
And also the last thought he has is basically a vivisection. You know, that these animals want to be cut the humans up and examine them in much the same way as they've examined the tortoises and the cephalopods, etc.
Yeah. And this is interesting too, like the vivisection aspect of it, because most alien movies that have human abductions, like, yeah, the aliens are cutting humans up to see what their biology looks like. That is strange to me because, like, yeah, but this is somehow done in a way that seems natural. The vivisection and the aliens also, they're interested. They're like, okay, what the heck is going on? We need to find out more, rather than just the usual way these stories are told, where aliens just randomly show up and start pulling people to cut them open.
Probing a bit.
Yeah.
Yeah. I also think the way that this book may pan out, or the way it seems to be panning out, seems to be an exploration of the use of AI, really, in an awful lot of ways. This very carefully manicured progression of using this, in this case, biological thing, but trying to create something that will help the running of the ship, help something that will do some of the functions for you that you don't want to do. And it's sort of fighting back, even in the very loose terms at the moment, of basically saying half of them do it half the time and do it really well and in a novel way that we didn't foresee, and then the other half don't. And it's that lack of control that humanity seems to have over the cephalopods, which seems to drive them towards kind of keeping on improving them, so to speak, and improving them, they're giving them a bit more than maybe they're comfortable giving, and especially because it's essentially one person's experiment. You know, he's sort of being run loose, that it can all turn around, and even the commander seems to have given him latitude to do it without putting any controls in place. Even the first case where they sort of didn't put any security controls to lock the cephalopods out.
Why didn't he put them in a sandbox?
Yeah.
Like a rookie mistake. You clearly don't write a lot of software.
It's like teaching kids. Just give them a couple of flashy diodes to play with and shit. You know, let them run amok. You know, don't let them anywhere in your system.
Yeah. Don't test in production.
Access to a production, to everything.
Exactly.
Right?
Don't test in production. Engineering 101. Don't do it.
Mm-hmm.
Listen to push to everything without reviews.
Right?
It's a mess.
I did find that bit a bit ridiculous. I was like, come on, that just. Nobody's that stupid. Even then, like, come on.
Yeah.
Something I was thinking about while you were mentioning, because like you mentioned AI, and there's some talk in these books of AI, and that made me think it's kind of different how these books were written. I don't know, like any book written more than 10 years ago, and it's thinking of AI in such a different way that we're now thinking. Like now we're thinking of all the neural network, the AI machine learning, and it's like very different than what the AI was thought it would be. Like it's like these books, it's like the AI is sort of like a person almost. It's like right, it thinks like a person. It follows back. It's not like what we think now, like mindlessly repeating things which maybe makes no sense but can mimic something real, I guess. But it is interesting how things change just in a very short amount of time. And like for the longest time period, everyone's thinking of AI is this specific way. And now we're all thinking about it in a completely different way.
This is 2019. It was published. So yeah, we've come a long way in 5 years.
There was that interesting note about...
It's been a couple of years, right? Yeah. No, go ahead.
I was saying that interesting note about Artie Fabian, which is like... I love that name. Artie Fabian, he wants to isolate himself and become his own person, but then that's because he's programmed to trend in that direction, which, like, again, just with those few lines, it gives us so much to think about in terms of like free will and are we programmed, like what nature versus nurture and whatnot. Like you could head off in so many directions with that, and we'll see where this one goes, but I think those questions keep coming up with any AI story.
As far as the humans go, I think that they didn't take those precautions or kind of put in those safeguards because they're so overconfident. I think it speaks to their hubris and just they're not worried about it. Like they think that they're, that they have everything under control, and obviously we know from reading any science fiction story that that's obviously not the case. So it's going to end badly.
Yeah, but
really, for just a startup, they don't have the money yet to put into security, right? So when they get the money, they'll do it.
You don't give kids a bunch of wires to play after you've connected them to something that could go haywire or that they can shock themselves with. You don't do that. Like even if you think that they can't do any damage.
Oh shoot! I go.
But it's funny you say that, Steve, because basically every sci-fi book basically says the biggest threat to humanity is hubris. It's not actually anything to do with alien technology or alien races. It's man's propensity to fuck itself up.
Yeah,
and be overconfident and play God or do anything like that.
Yeah. I feel it would be more realistic if the problem was not hubris, but just stupidity or just forgetting about things. That in real life seemed to be more the issue with these sort
that
of things.
funding thing. We'll do it when we have more people.
Yeah, it's not like maliciousness a lot of the time. It's just like, well, we can do it later, or I forgot about it, or didn't think about it.
Well, how great would it be if Tchaikovsky or Beltiel were inside the heads going, I don't know how I got this job, but my sister's brother happened to be president at the time, and I managed to get on the ship at the time, and that's why I'm here, and I really don't know anything about what's going on. That'd be quite realistic.
Yeah.
Interesting too. It'd be fun.
I was the loudest person in the room, so they chose me.
Yeah. Or I was an influencer, and I had 20 million followers on Instagram, and they made me captain on the ship.
all our problems with various jobs coming out. Sorry, Jared.
It wouldn't surprise me. We talk about on this podcast. We talk a lot about how science in every podcast, but we talk about science fiction and it reflecting kind of the times. I do think we're going to, as this like Gen Z, Gen Alpha gets older, we're going to see a lot of science fiction based around social media influencers, that sort of thing. I think that'll be that, and climate change, I think, will be the next kind of wave.
Yeah.
Think about it, like how much of science fiction from before 2000 talked of anything like social media, right? Nothing, pretty much. Yeah. Maybe there might have been someone, but I can't think of anything.
Yeah, well, there was the cyberpunk movement that came the closest to it, really. Yeah. But they, predicting the net and all that stuff. Yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, well, the last two books that have basically been released of any note have been Service Model by Adrian Tchaikovsky, about the service robot killing its owner, and Anibot. It's a similar kind of idea. Those are the most recent two. When I go into the bookshop and look at what science fiction books, there's so few that get published nowadays compared to fantasy or otherwise. But that is what is in the mind or in the genesis of the genre at the moment, is very much about the robots or the things that we create turning against us.
Yeah. Yeah.
We're going back to bed again.
Yeah.
It's interesting, though, that there's so much more nuance to those stories now. Like, turning against us, it's not because they've become evil, but because we're using them for all the wrong things, which, yeah.
True. Even in movies, right? There's a bunch of movies like that, too. Like, what was it? I can't remember. There's a couple of very famous ones, right? The couple last 3 years. And even the video games, right? What was it? Detroit... Become Us,
being human,
right?
Yeah, being human,
Become human, yeah. So, true.
Yeah, that's true. Like, service model is basically about a robot that's killed its master, and it not understanding how it could have done it because its programming kind of it was such that it was supposed to serve it under all things. So it's like about the machine trying to come to terms with what it's done itself, in much the same way as a human would look and say, like, I don't know. Why did I piss down the back of the radiator when I was drunk? You know, how could that have happened? I know. I was potty trained at 3, you know.
True story.
Obviously, speaking of a friend. Different story for a different podcast.
Friday conversations. That... I thought it was cute when, what's his name? Tchaikovsky thinks to himself that the octopuses are getting a little too complicated and unpredictable. I thought the idea of an uplift virus was to make something human. I mean, what do you think humans are? You think humans are not complex and predictable?
Yeah, that's one of the misunderstandings of evolution is that everything's going to evolve into be a human-like thing, and that's just that's not actually how evolution works. But so that's interesting because he also he said he bred them and mutated them and played all sorts of God, and now they wanted to know why he had no answer, and I thought that was a great line because. Yeah. It's like, because you're not a god, you idiot. You know? And you're playing with things you don't understand.
Yeah. I guess what would any living thing ask its God? Like, why? Why am I here?
Yeah.
Why did you create us?
New pass butter, right? Is that what the Rick and Morty one is? Yeah.
Was it because I could? That's why.
Because it could, yeah.
I got drunk one night and you happened. And
that's good. Only funny because
that would make an interesting theological point of view for a fantasy book.
The got drunk bit.
I don't know, like asking God why he created them, and having a similar answer or something, right? I don't think I've ever read anything like that.
I don't seem to recall any.
The Big Bang happened because he left the oven on too long, discussion.
Or some satirical book about present day religion or something, right? It's like, I don't know, some guy finds God in a bar and asks him why. You know what I mean?
Douglas Adams covered it pretty well in Hitchhiker's
Guide. Oh my God!
And he said, "And let there be light," and everyone thought that was generally a bad idea. Boo.
Oh, but Hitchhiker's Guide does some really interesting things with the God figure in. Is it the first book or the second book? I forget.
Yeah.
Life, no, it's not in Restaurant at the End of the World at the universe. So it must be in the first book, but
yeah. Actually, it's probably similar things in like the Discworld now that I think about it, right? Very.
Yeah. Usually it's in a humor type of situation when they explore that kind of thing.
That would be a challenge, wouldn't it? Giving that as a serious answer, which I guess one of the series that we are reading kind of does, at least so far it seems to be. Bread, that's all I'll say. Wheat and bread. Yes, harvest.
Harvest, yeah. Two other people on this podcast are like, what are you guys talking about? Reference another series. But I was curious what everyone thought about seeing the spiders and the humans and their relationship. after the first book, seeing them here, what was your reaction?
Everybody's getting along swimmingly.
Yeah. Is it just my impression, or like the humans like maybe slightly second-class citizens to the spiders? It seemed a bit like that, but I can't pinpoint exactly why.
It's because they basically enslaved them by drugging them. That'll tend to do it.
They de-evolved them.
There are several statements where the spiders claim to be superior, like that opening conversation between the Portia and the Holston. And
the Holston.
Oh, yeah. She doesn't say it, right? She thinks it. She doesn't.
Yeah, it's implied because it's from her point of view. So you get that implication, you know, but
I wonder if it's an actual like racism or not.
It was something to the effect of they made them understand.
Yeah.
Or they came to an understanding by injecting them with some drug.
Yeah.
Maybe
they all seem quite happy.
They seem quite happy.
What do you think?
Maybe a question that nobody wants to answer, but would racism be justified in this case since they're actual different races with different capabilities? You know what I mean?
Well, I would say these are different species.
I guess. Well, it's speciesism. Let's call it speciesism. But it's really the same thing.
Speciesism is
not easy to say. That's going to go wrong.
We're speciesist. Yeah.
Speciesist, yeah.
That's a word, right? Specious meaning not, having a false look of being fair. Yeah.
I think so.
So, speciesism.
Yeah, would it be justified?
I mean, I sort of, now to think about it, you know that old duck would rather be attacked by 1,000 ducks or, one bird-sized duck, or what, 1,000 ducks or 1,000
horse-sized duck or 1,000 duck-sized horses,
That's one. They could have done that in this book, except it's going to be octopuses and spiders. Octopi, sorry.
You want to be Saint-Gobain.
What an idiot.
What do you guys think of the human need to think like the spiders do? Well, I guess they have different motives, right? The two humans who are experimenting with the spiders, one just wants to be able to communicate better with them, and the other wants... I understand this goal because the understandings of the spiders are pretty convenient, so to be able to get it for the humans, that seems like a reasonable goal. And I guess communication with the spiders makes sense too.
It might be a necessary trait that the humans need to develop just to survive. Going forward, who knows? I mean, that's might be how they're looking at it. Whether it's true or not, we don't know. But I think that's a very interesting question about whether the humans can even get there first in the first place, whether they have the biology to be able to do it, and whether or not that biology can be manufactured the way the spiders were. That's great questions that I don't think we know yet.
I actually really like that scene when he was getting he got for a second the perception of a spider, and it's like, oh, I feel like I have legs in all directions, but it's not really. I mean, he's just frying his brain. I really like that. It was kind of like a bit horror, kind of that.
Yeah.
A little bit.
Yeah. It's curious that he wants the understandings of the spiders, though, because, let's say theoretically they can hand off whatever learnings they have with each other, through communication. What they really need is the ability to transmit skill through genetics or the virus, which is what they should be researching. But I guess it makes for a more interesting story to get spider senses. This is actually a retelling of Spider-Man. That's
But I think in a society like theirs, you can probably have AIs that do that job, but have all the databases of information and interpret it in a way more efficient way, I would think.
Yeah. Which is what Kern is, right? But Portia wants something more intimate, not Portia, Holston. I don't remember her first name, but Helena, right. She wants something more intimate. She wants to be able to talk to the spiders directly. And for good reason, because Khan is inserting her own nonsense in the translations.
I think what's interesting about that is because isn't it Portia that says she doesn't really like the humans, apart from Helena's the only one that she really has time for in any way. So it isn't all harmonious, and especially from Portia being near the top of their leadership kind of chain, just below Bianca. That's what she thinks.
I agree with her.
Portia or Helena?
Portia apologist T-shirt incoming. There you go.
Portia
I want understanding, damn it.
What was I gonna say?
Sorry, guys. I need to go now.
Thanks, Dad.
I'll remember to upload.
Bye.
Okay. Bye, guys.
See you then.
Bye, Dan.
So I did think it was a bit strange / convenient that these two groups are carrying on their research in the spaceship. Sure, there's a bit of an explanation for it with the other guy, the male researcher who's working with Fabian, saying that they have less disapproval and judgment back home, so they can work better together here. And the reasoning is sufficient. It's just strange, I think, story-wise.
Something just occurred to me. Is it possible, because we talked about, I was complaining about the universe feeling small. Did Kern intentionally bring these groups together somehow?
It depends on who detected those distress signals, right? Did Khan, excuse me, and then send these guys on a mission, or did the spiders use their own equipment? If Khan seems to be their main computer interface, so that does make sense. That theory makes sense. But sorry, go ahead.
Maybe Kern is setting her creation loose, seeing what's going to happen.
They are only 30 light years away. It's not as if they are. In galactical terms, it's not that far, especially if you consider if people were to leave Earth, they're going to head out basically in the same direction, which is kind of out past Neptune, Pluto. So it is. I'm not saying it's likely, but it can be probable that they'd been sort of a similar course, in some way, slight deviances rather than a thing. They're all heading for the same galaxy, so to speak. They're all heading for Alpha Centauri.
But I think what Steve's saying is right. I think that hopefully there's a deeper reason to beyond just
we need a trilogy.
Galaxy,
Yeah, the 30 light years distance, we are expecting that the radio waves that we are putting out into the universe will go out that far, right? It maybe not be diffused, but
yeah,
I don't know. And if it's I don't know if it's a directed signal, but we'll see. Anyway, yeah, I think that makes sense. But if Khan is sending them out, what are her motivations? Because she hates contact with other humans. So if she suspects there are humans in that direction, she's probably trying to dissuade these guys from ever leaving the planet or going some other direction for exploration, which Portia and gang were already keen on because they are explorers and adventurers, apparently. So, yeah. That does make sense, but I think her motivations would be very interesting if it was her. What else? Yeah, we talked about that terrifying injection in the end. That was scary.
Yeah. It definitely is one of those read and find out more kind of scenarios. Yeah. I think at the moment, we don't really have an idea of what the story is yet, or the direction of the story, or anything like that. It's very much set up. We'll see maybe our friends the spiders. We mightn't see them again till the very end of the book, though. That might be the way
but there's
this
a past
goes.
and present section
What more
for
we can
every section coming up, and I think the present is
Yeah.
these.
1, 2, 3, whatever it is. Yeah, we're going
Yeah.
into the present now, so I have a feeling we're going to see my friend
It
Portia
almost
again.
feels like the present sections are a way to build this working backward story, because more like it's almost evenly split between the current state of the system that Tchaikovsky and co were at versus like the humans and spiders trying to communicate better with each other. I wonder if we'll start to see parallels between that and the humans and octopi and humans and aliens communicating with each other later on, like we did in the first book. Yeah. Any other topics before we move on to talking about the September 2005 Martian? What's up with that prefix of the story name? Is it that it's supposed to be set in September 2005? Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. Humanity will have moved to Mars by that stage. Phil?
Yeah. When was this written? Like 49 or something, or 50?
Something like that, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
This was a fun story.
Yeah, I like the story.
Jared is apparently a Martian barkeep for today.
Yes.
Yeah, it was a good story. I liked it very much. Have you guys read the Martian Chronicles or anything else?
No, or Fahrenheit 451, neither.
I haven't read Ray Bradbury's Martian Chronicles, but I've read Lavi Tidar's Martian Sands, which features a Martian shapeshifter named Kita Amin. I have named one of my Kindles after the character. He's Kita Amin, Martian warrior. I loved that section of the story, Martian Sands. So it was interesting to see.
I named one of my Kindles after it. That's fantastic. Is this the Kindle where you use you have a special Kindle for skipping forward, checking out the end of the book so you don't lose your place?
No, the paperbacks are more convenient for that.
Is that the shapeshifter one? It's your shapeshifter one. It wasn't me. Yeah. It was the Martian.
It was
Tom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the overview of the story is basically all these people living on Mars. Basically, well, this couple starts with they see their dead son, and invite him home, and it turns out that everybody sees some person that's gone in their lives or they don't see, and that this thing appears to them in some way, and the poor thing just wants to exist and be loved, and can't handle being around, and eventually, shock horror, humanity destroys it rather than have something good.
Yeah, they were like a bunch of seagulls. Mine.
Yep.
Can't just let a good thing be.
Yeah. It was. I thought it was a pretty beautiful story. I thought it was well written. I love the beginning, the very first line, where it says the blue mountains lifted into the rain, and the rain fell down into the long canals. And old Lafarge and his wife came out of the house to watch. And then right after that, they say it's good. They say it's welcome. But then right after that, they shut the door and they go inside in there. They shiver at the fire and they're warming their hands. And that kind of sets the tone of how the rest of the stories is going to go. Because later on in the story, we have when they ended up destroying what they all wanted. Then the rain came, they looked up, and then they walked away, just in the same manner. And I just thought it was very well set up. It painted the picture of the scenery and the blending, and it made it kind of surreal. And then moving away and shutting yourself off from it to get back to reality. And that scenery and that dose of that scenery helps you forget about the mundane aspects of the rest of your life or the things that happened in the past that you might not have liked. And I just thought that whole theme just resonated very well. And I thought it was a very subtle how he put it all together. And I thought it was beautiful.
Yeah. And I love the central theme that I think it was trying to explore, the this aspect of if something looks like the real thing, would you is that really any different from if it's like an imitation? I'm not phrasing that well, but I think it's a question that has been asked in other books I've read recently. Like, if the dream is better than reality, is it really so bad if you continue living the dream, or do you like need the wake up call? Like, what I guess are the pros and cons of either situation? There is, of course, the greater possibility of heartbreak when you wake up, but I think that was done really well. And also this question of, is a different person's grief greater than your own? I think, like, sure, there is a selfish need to make yourself, maybe your wife, suffer less, but also like there's this aspect of a little bit weighing of the grief that I found myself doing, because the second family, they lost their daughter more recently, and they had hope that she might still be alive. Whereas these guys have reconciled themselves over 20 years to the loss of their child. So is one grief greater than the other, or like are they both equally still dealing with it? Or I guess how long it can last and how it similarly affects both of them. I think those were also some really interesting things that I thought of when reading the story.
Yeah. I think part of the things that struck me about it was that obviously the father knew that it wasn't his son. The mother, whether she didn't realize that or was just so willing to accept it, but that it wasn't enough to just have it and to keep it a secret. She had to show it off. They had to do the family things again. She insisted to it. Like, it was, even though the Martian was uncomfortable with it and it kind of voiced that, it didn't matter. The mum was like, no, this is what we're doing. And almost forced a situation where they lost the child again, because of their desire to do it. It was sort of like incredibly sad, because it was really just a band-aid for them in a lot of ways. You wonder how long that would have lasted in terms of keep sustaining them or otherwise, especially if the child didn't age and stuff like that, but they never got the chance. And it's just, again, how little care they had for it at the end. At the end, everybody was sort of fighting at it, pecking at it, really wanted it. And then eventually when somebody says it's dead, oh, well, everybody back to their houses.
Like, they didn't even stop to, like, take care of it. And
they didn't bury it or
exactly.
nothing like that.
And all of them prioritized their own need over what the kid wanted, right? Well, we only saw our main characters here do that, but Tom, quote unquote, Tom begged to not be taken to the market because he can't guarantee that he won't be trapped. And he might be trapped in a bad way, like the guy, like the time when he went to the market and became someone who was murdered. And that cannot be a good relationship to have with their killer, right? So I think they did not pay heed to what the kid wanted. I think that was also an interesting aspect of that story.
Definitely.
Yeah, that's interesting, and you're dead on with that theme, because it's one of the voices said, if you can't have the reality, a dream is just as good, and that was part of what they were, he was exploring here, and I really love that, and everything you said was just dead on, and it was so well done. This whole thing.
Yeah, I thought so.
And short too, and it was
quickly.
like, it didn't take him long to get across everything he wanted to, and I thought that was that just made it more powerful for me.
It really did. And so the introduction to that story, a bit of a tangential question, it wrote a lot about how Bradbury's style was literary, to the point where some of his contemporaries told him to, like, stop. That's not genre fiction anymore. So did you guys think that this story was representative of the literary style that apparently he was known for?
It's hard to know, but it definitely didn't read literary, if that makes sense. It read much more like a Dresden Files, almost like nearly almost like an urban fantasy of some sort, rather than even a sci-fi book of some set. And it's sort of reminiscent, I think, of Stephen King, if anything. That kind of small town vibe. Even if you want to extend that, like some of the ideas in Pet Sematary that I've just finished reading are pretty much the same things that are here. Within this. So to me, Stephen King was the thing that it most reminded me of, and I don't think people consider King to be literary genre, really. Maybe they do, maybe that is part of his appeal in some ways, but he definitely had that kind of small town feel to it.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's something deeper here, though, than some of the King stories.
Yeah,
I don't know. There's definitely like I said in here, the poetic and evocative, something about his writing that brings that out. And I don't know who was telling him to knock it off, but I don't. I'm glad he didn't. But no, I'd be interested to read some more of his stuff to see if he keeps this style or if he veers into other styles or not. It was pretty impressive, I thought.
Yeah,
I do want to read the Martian Chronicles. Like I liked this glimpse of the source material that Martian Sands built on top of, but I want to read the book.
For sure.
Was there anything else about the story that we should talk about?
Everybody should read it. It's definitely a very enjoyable read, and not heavy going at all. Even though it may have come across that some of the themes were heavy, but a lot of those are kind of very evident. You don't have to dig hard for them. I think in the story that they're very much on the surface there. It's very good.
And it's interesting how they. She was only 60 years old, and she's referred to as the old woman. And I'm just like, come on. But it was interesting because you wonder what level of unconscious feelings she's had this whole time towards Tom, because when he first came in, she was like, go away, she didn't want anything to do with it. But then once her husband said it's all right, we're just we're gonna take him in, and then once something clicked and she totally flipped and went the other way and like, nope, this is my boy, and so what kind of subconscious reasoning led to that click to suddenly have her son back and accept that for what it was, and then to the point where she endangered him to have that sense of normality of going to the market with him or whatever, and I thought that was a pretty good exploration of somebody's possible psychic reasoning in such a short time. That was very just so cool.
Yeah, I think for how short it was, it does have a lot of depth, I think. It also has a little bit of that jaunty tone, I think, that the rest of the stories that we've read in this collection have, like this almost like a high level fun and fast moving aspect to it, except for maybe Tlon Akbar, but that also had a bit of like a underlying tone of generalized fun. So I think it does have that, even though it's about the return of a dead son and how a family deals with it. I think it does still have that like fast moving and almost like, don't think about it too much. Like, here's all these other fun things that are happening here.
Yeah. There's not a wasted word, definitely.
Cool, then. So we'll see everybody in a week from now with the second part of Children of Ruin. And I already forgot the name of the short story. It's called Baby HP. By Juan Jose Ariola. We will see you in a week. Thank you so much for listening.